news, but it is scary. The Biden administration just last week was talking about vigorous diplomacy and that the best way to have successful diplomacy was de-escalation. And then this week we see him putting 8,500 US troops on alert, talking about sending more warships and military planes to the region. And then in the House and the Senate, there are bills being introduced and being fast-tracked, one set of them by the Republicans and one set of them by the Democrats, but both of them calling for massive weapons to be sent to Ukraine. The Republicans are calling for $450 million. The Democrats up them by calling for $500 million. Nancy Pelosi is saying we're not even going to have this come out of the floor of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. We're going to send it right to the House floor, meaning that it's going to be fast-tracked and will probably come for a vote next week. The Democrats in both the House and the Senate are already busy getting co-sponsors onto that. The one by Bob Menendez already has 41 co-sponsors on it, and that's all Democrats. It includes a lot of, quote, liberals like Chris Murphy and Durbin and Merkley from Oregon. So, you know, it just shows us once again that we have two war parties. We've seen this before and we're seeing it now. And the progressives, in the meantime, are much more focused always on domestic issues. And you don't hear them in Congress coming out and screaming, what the heck is going on? What we need now is de-escalation, diplomacy, and not antagonizing Russia. And the other thing I want to say is that it really is a time when progressives have to come together and talk about NATO and how NATO should have been disbanded at the time of the breakup of the Soviet Union and when the Warsaw Pact was disbanded. And there were guarantees that were given to Gorbachev that NATO would not move eastward. And instead of keeping to those guarantees, NATO has steadily moved eastward and now is right on Russia's border. And so instead of the progressives in Congress saying, you know, now is the time to talk about disbanding NATO, there's all this talk about shoring up NATO. And so, you know, I think it is also a shame that aside from CODEPINK and groups like Veterans for Peace and World Beyond War and Black Alliance for Peace, and, you know, there are peace groups, we're small and we don't have the ability to mobilize. The media puts out a pretty consistent message on whether it's MSNBC, there are some good shows, but most of them not very good. CNN or even Fox, it's all about is Biden tough enough? And should he be putting the sanctions on Russia now or wait to use them as leverage? And should he be sending troops now or waiting? So we don't have media that can help us, that is mainstream, large media. And we don't have enough voices in the Democratic Party, and our organizations are small. So this is the time when we have to really work overtime and get the message out that it is really insane what the Biden administration is doing with the support of most Democrats and Republicans, that the American people don't want war, especially a war with a nuclear-armed Russia. And that for the vast majority of American people, they couldn't find Ukraine on a map, much less want the US to go to war to guarantee Ukraine's sovereignty. So this is definitely the time to get out on the streets like we're doing on Thursday in Washington, D.C. in front of the White House at 1 p.m. We're also having an emergency webinar this afternoon at 4 p.m. with the former Chief of Staff of Colin Powell, Larry Wilkerson. And we think it's so important to be educating and mobilizing now and calling for negotiations and de-escalation.
Oh. Medea, thank you so much. Yes.